Being a teenage girl of this day and age, I could have never imagined being caged in the four walls of my house. I cannot think of having brooms in my hands instead of books. I would have felt awful if I was not being able to see my own son and husband under the same roof. I did not know that at such a young age, there are people who go through such life-changing experiences. Today, I'll be bringing forth the story of Malti Devi Pandey, my warrior mother who endured many hardships in her life and came out stronger as ever. My mother was born on the 7th of June 1964. She lived in a two-room flat at Queenstown with her parents and her four brothers. Being the third oldest among her siblings and the only sister, her brothers respected her and loved her unconditionally. She was the apple of the eye of the family, but sadly not to her father, who was very strict and dominating by nature. Once he decided something, everyone was to obey his decision, and in particular, women. He has always believed that a woman does not need to be educated, but rather she has to learn the household chores and the importance of bringing up a family. With this at the back of his mind, he prohibited my mother to continue her education and told her to leave school when she was just 12 years old. She was appalled at his decision and could not come to terms with not being able to go to school every day. However, my mother did not utter a single word and agreed silently with her father's decision. The amount of deep respect she had for her father as a head of the family was enough for her to turn a blind eye to his decision of depriving her from her right to education. Hence, my mother complied and stayed at home for the rest of her life. It was tough watching her brothers preparing themselves for another day of school while she prepared herself for housework. The discrimination was so evident that it was hard to ignore its existence. 5 years passed in a wheeze, and at the age of 17, my mother's marriage proposal had come. Without even asking my mother about her feelings or opinions, her father finalized the alliance, but luckily my mother loved the groom, who is now my father. Their wedding took place and a new chapter began for my mother. My mother dealt with many problems at her in-laws' house. Her mother-in-law was a fierce one who demanded perfection at every task from my mother. Not fulfilling her orders would often result into harsh reprimands, but my mother faced everything with a smile on her face. She soon got pregnant and gave birth to her first child, Arjun, in 1984. Since he was the first grandchild of the family, my mother's mother-in-law really pampered him and kept him close to her. Rarely was Arjun seen with my mother or my father. They did not spend much time together. The gap in this parent-child relationship was never fully bridged. Eventually, my father bought a house on his own and he moved out with my mother, Arjun and my twin brothers who were born by then. In 2002, they even welcomed their young daughter into their family as well. However, Arjun and his relationship with his father was still rocky because their mindset was way apart. Everything worsened with the unfortunate fight in 2009. Arjun was working part-time to fork up the money for his university fees. He needed extra money to pay his fees for the last semester, so he asked my father directly for the money. Knowing how stingy my father was, he snapped at Arjun for asking additional money. Seeing this reaction, Arjun infuriated and began hurling vulgarities. Eventually, they both began verbally abusing each other face to face. My mother stood in the middle of them in a bid to calm any one of them down, but to no avail. The fight escalated to the point where my father took up a knife and pointed it towards Arjun. My mother tried to take the knife away from my father's hand, but in turn, her hand bled profusely. That incident has always stayed with my mother. My mother tried her best to settle the things between Arjun and my father, but they were both not ready to budge. They held their obstinacy and arrogance to be of utmost importance. My mother cried for all those years when Arjun was not in his own house beside her. He left to stay with his aunt, leaving a void in her heart, but she did not show the amount of pain she had to endure. With a strong front, she lived her life. She knew she did not have the fate of having both of her precious gems of her life at once. This is the heartbreaking story of Malti Devi Pandey, a woman who led her life with dignity and happiness when her life was unfair and miserable. She believes in facing every challenge that comes her way with her head held high. Do not run away from any problems you face in life. Be strong and have unshakable faith in God. And if you feel that injustice is happening to you, raise your voice against it and fight for your rights. This is what my mother had to say at the end of it all. Thank you, everyone.